Now, I haven't posting much for the past couple of weeks. That's because I have lots of things going on in personal life. However, I plan to get back to this real soon. And also, something that's been keeping me real busy is that we're working on a project for all DeFi lovers labeled as DeFi as a service. So you'll get exposed to legit DeFi protocols with actual yield without the need to do much. Just deposit your capital, withdraw at any time, and earn dividends in between. That's all. More details? You have Twitter. I have link in the description below. And if you join our Telegram community, you're gonna learn more about this project as well as have fun because it's a cool room. Now, leverage yield farming is a term used across DeFi protocols in order to signify a new movement in terms of, producing yield. Because yield farming has been a thing for a while, but it all started with fake yield when fake dexes would pop up, put up a liquidity pool because they siphoned some money through an ICO or a pre-sale, and then people would buy up the launch, prop up the token price, and people would farm it, high APRs, get this token and sell it. So you get yield through inflation, aka fake yield. Now, with more yield protocols coming in, meaning yield that have services that produce actual revenue through either trading, through either other financial services, you have the capacity to earn actual income. Now, the thing is, if you want to learn actual income because it's not driven through inflation anymore, then those APRs are dialed down. And that's expected, that's normal, because the less risky the asset is, the less it will produce in terms of actual revenue. Of course, the more risky you'll get more, but then you're also subject to price depreciation, which is in most cases, a net loss at the end of the day, even if you earn yield in between with the high APR. Because remember also that APRs, so the numbers that you see right here, are in most cases a bit false. Now, I took XtraFi as an example because I spoke about XtraFi. You can check, I have videos on my YouTube channel. You can check what this project does, but this is an example of a protocol that I personally use in order to leverage yield farm. Now, this new type of movement, like I said, comes with pros and cons. All right, so there are so many ways to go about this, and there are also less riskier ways, but we're not gonna complicate things here. We're just gonna talk about why this is something that perhaps is entertaining or something that you could explore if you are somebody who is, diving into LP farming, diving into general yield farming on chain, and not the fake kite, like I said. All right, so for me at least, whenever you want to enter something like this, you should understand the whole facet. You should understand what this is about. All right, so put simply, what you're doing here is that you're taking your capital. So assuming you want to farm with $1,000, but farming with $1,000 at 10% APR lands you $100 after a year. All right, however, you want to earn more with that 1,000. So what you would do is that you would borrow funds from lenders to increase your capacity and earn the same APR but with a higher deposit that is mainly not yours, but you'll get the rewards that are applied to that higher deposits. All right, so let's say I have 1,000, I borrow 2,000, now I'm farming with 3,000 instead of 2, so I end up with 300 on my 1,000. So my APR, which is at its base still 10%, has been propped up to 30%, and that gives me $300 at the end. Now, we're just talking general numbers here. We're not gonna dive into the details. Like I said, APRs are very dynamic, and most probably the number that you see is gonna be false. But that's the basic gist of it. That's the basic logic of it. Now, you might say, okay, so why are people lending their assets? It's because they are also earning interest on those lent assets. Now, of course, safest way to go about this, if you're just gonna want to chill, earn a higher interest than what you see, for example, on lending and borrowing platforms, and if you trust the protocol, is to just lend your ETH, your USDC, and the lending percentages are quite attractive. So they're usually more than what you see on lending and borrowing platforms like Aave. So if I click on lend here, I'm connected to Optimism now. You're gonna see the different lending APRs, and for example, this one is about 17 almost 18%, but they also give you their native asset on top. So there are actual extra incentives here, but you get the gist of it. And that brings me to the pros. So because of what I just told you, then the major pro here is that you're earning more with the same amount of capital. So I don't have to put in 3,000 of my own money to earn that 30%, so that's 300 bucks. I only have to put in 1,000 and then I'll earn that money at the end of the day, minus whatever I pay for the lenders, of course. All right. And the risk is technically more or less controlled, because at the end of the day, if you enter a stable pair or something that you know of, then when it comes to liquidation, which is what we're gonna dive into very shortly, then you're not really exposed to that, right? Because first of all, you don't go all in leverage, so you don't borrow too much. That's one thing. And second thing is that, like I said, if it's a stable pair, as in, let's say there's an asset and a synthetic form of that asset, then as long as the peg remains, somewhat, around that same level, then you're fine. Of course, there are cases when the synthetic asset depegs, then you're screwed. But again, those are special cases. We're talking about normal cases. So, but for me, the major pro here is that you're gonna earn more with the same amount of capital. And that's pretty good. However, there's a small, caveat here, is that there is a limited amount of lenders in terms of not only the people who are lending, in terms of the capital as well, because they put limitations. So they don't let the utilization rate go above a certain percentage, because above that, lending your asset becomes really lucrative. You earn a lot of money through interest, and then simply leverage yield farming becomes unattractive and takes everyone with you. So for example, if you reach a limit, and that brings me to the cons, by the way, so you can go to a negative APR if you lend too much money, so you're paying too much interest to the point where you're not making money anymore, and then you drag everyone with you. So keep in mind that whenever you want to do this, whenever you want to open a position, you should always look at the APR after you want to provide money. So if I come here, for example, I'm just clicking on the random farm, I have to basically go to my, let's say I want to enter this farm, I'm putting in USDC, so I enter some money here, and while I'm doing that, I'm looking at the APR and if it's changing. So now it dropped a bit. Let's say I put a bit more money, it dropped a bit more, and if I put 100,000 USDC in, then it drops by almost 50%. And that is a pair that has high liquidity. So imagine you go into a pair that has reached the threshold in terms of lending and borrowing, then better not enter it, because you're gonna get a very low APR. You're gonna drag everyone with you. It's just not worth it. All right. Liquidation, of course, is another con, because at the end of the day, you are at the mercy of the borrowers. So if something were to happen, price of one asset drops below a certain threshold, then you're screwed. Just keep in mind that you should look at the liquidation price at all times. And impermanent loss, because sometimes you're attracted to what the stable pair per se is going to bring you in terms of leverage yield farming APR. So you don't do much research about SUSD, EUSD, USDV. I'm just throwing random tokens here, but some of them do actually exist. So you just go blindly into the stable pair, and then lo and behold, it starts depegging, and then the farming capabilities are not outweighed by the depeg. So the depeg is greater, you're not offsetting this, you're losing money, and you end up closing your position at a loss because you don't want to lose more. So just keep in mind that even though the APR might be attractive, there's some risk here, because perhaps the stable coin is not so stable at the end of the day. So I think with everything DeFi, there's risk involved, and you should know what you're looking for in order for you to understand better before jumping ship. Now the thing is, if you want to maximize and optimize your strategy here, at least for me, it makes sense to lend and leverage yield farm, and do this with a pair that you're using in both cases, because assumingly the APR props down because more people are entering, not enough lenders. Okay, you're earning less here, but because of this, the interest for the the lenders increased, then you're gonna earn more there. So it's not a full offset, but at least you're benefiting somewhere. So in one of the cases, either the two benefit or one of them will. So try to be at both ends at the same time so you're benefiting in both cases. Again, it's not the same weight, but at least it's something. And if you cannot do that, that's fine. I'm just saying that this is a strategy that would work better in most cases. And I also mentioned this because numerical, our project, will also be using leverage yield farming as one of the strategies. All right, details will come later. And with that, see you in the next one. Have a good one.